Lyra Winters stood before the gleaming silver ship, her violin case clutched tightly against her chest. The morning sun caught the crystalline panels of the vessel, sending rainbow refractions dancing across the landing pad. She still couldn't believe she'd been chosen for this mission, to be Earth's first musical ambassador to the Harmonians. "Remember, Ms. Winters," Director Harrison said, checking his tablet one last time, "the Harmonians communicate primarily through precise sound frequencies. They consider our music primitive and chaotic. Your job is to help them understand the value of human musical expression." Lyra nodded, trying to keep her nervousness from showing. At 32, she'd spent her life teaching music to children at her small conservatory in Portland. Now she was about to board an alien ship to teach music to beings who thought human art was nothing more than noise. The Harmonian representative, Guardian Zeph, emerged from the ship. Their crystalline form caught the sunlight, sending prismatic patterns across the ground. Like all Harmonians, Zeph's body was composed of translucent, geometric shapes that seemed to shift and realign with each movement. When they spoke, it was through perfectly modulated tones that translated into English through their communication device. "We are prepared for departure, Teacher Winters," Zeph's tones rang clear and precise. "Though I must express my continued skepticism about this exchange. Our youth are already showing concerning signs of tonal imprecision." Lyra straightened her spine. "Music isn't about precision, Guardian Zeph. It's about expression, emotion, and connection." "Precisely our concern," Zeph responded, their crystalline form shifting to a slightly more angular configuration that Lyra had learned indicated disapproval. As they boarded the ship, Lyra met several young Harmonians who would be her first students. Their forms were smaller, with softer edges than the adults, and they emanated gentle, curious tones when they saw her violin case. One of them, who introduced themselves as Echo, moved closer. "Is it true that humans make music without frequency calculations?" they asked, their tones carrying what seemed like wonder rather than the usual Harmonian dismissal. "We do," Lyra smiled, carefully opening her violin case. "Would you like to hear?" Before Echo could respond, Guardian Zeph interrupted with a sharp, precise tone. "There will be time for demonstrations later. Please secure yourself for departure, Teacher Winters." As the ship lifted off, Lyra watched Earth grow smaller through the viewport. She thought about her students back home, about the joy on their faces when they mastered a difficult piece or found their own unique way to interpret a melody. The Harmonians might think human music was chaos, but she knew better. In that supposed chaos was the very essence of what made humans special, their ability to find beauty in imperfection and meaning in variation. The journey to the Harmonian homeworld took 3 days. During that time, Lyra observed how the Harmonians communicated through their precise frequencies. Every interaction was calculated, each tone exactly measured. It was beautiful in its way, but to her ears, it lacked the warmth and spontaneity of human music. Echo and a few other young Harmonians would often drift near her cabin, emanating quiet, questioning tones. She could sense their curiosity, their desire to understand this strange human who carried music in a wooden box. Despite Guardian Zeph's disapproval, she would sometimes hum quietly, watching as their crystalline forms shifted and sparkled in response. When they finally arrived at the Harmonian homeworld, Lyra gasped at the sight. The entire planet seemed to be made of crystal, with cities that rose in perfect geometric patterns, each structure designed to capture and reflect sound waves in precise mathematical sequences. As they descended toward the capital city, Guardian Zeph turned to her. "Remember, Teacher Winters, you are here to observe and understand our superior methods of sound production. We do not expect you to teach our youth your primitive patterns." Lyra smiled gently, her hand resting on her violin case. "With respect, Guardian Zeph, I'm here to share, not just observe. Music isn't about superiority, it's about connection. And sometimes the most beautiful connections come from unexpected places." The ship landed with a perfectly modulated hum, and as the door opened, Lyra heard the symphony of the Harmonian city, thousands of precise tones combining in mathematical harmony. It was beautiful, but to her ears, it was missing something essential: the unpredictable, emotional heart that made music truly come alive. Looking at the curious young Harmonians gathering around her, their forms shifting with barely contained excitement, Lyra knew that this was just the beginning. She might not be able to change their entire society's view of human music, but if she could help even one young Harmonian understand the beauty of imperfection, the power of emotional expression through sound, then perhaps that would be enough to start building a bridge between their worlds. As she stepped onto the crystal surface of their world, Lyra began humming softly, not a precisely calculated frequency, but a simple lullaby her mother used to sing. She noticed echoes form shimmer slightly, resonating with the melody, and smiled. Sometimes the greatest revolutions began with the smallest notes. The crystalline classroom sparkled with morning light as Lyra unpacked her violin. 30 young harmonians sat in perfect geometric formations, their forms emanating the precisely tuned frequencies that served as their equivalent of attentive silence. Guardian Zeph stood at the back, their angular form rigid with disapproval. Today, Lyra announced, positioning her violin under her chin, we're going to learn about something humans call improvisation. A discordant burst of confused tones filled the room. Echo, sitting in the front row, shifted their crystalline structure slightly forward. But Teacher Winters, how can we produce sound without calculating the frequencies first? Lyra smiled, drawing her bow across the strings in a gentle warm-up. Music isn't just about mathematics, it's about feeling. Watch. She began to play, starting with Bach's violin concerto in a minor, something she knew would appeal to their appreciation of structure. Then, gradually, she began to improvise, weaving her own emotions into the classical piece. The young harmonians' forms flickered with uncertainty. Some emanated distressed frequencies, while others, including Echo, began to shift their crystalline patterns in sync with her music. Guardian Zeph stepped forward, about to interrupt, but Lyra caught their eye and shook her head slightly, never stopping her play. As the music filled the room, Echo suddenly produced a tone that wasn't mathematically perfect. It was something new, an attempt to match the emotional quality of Lyra's violin. The other students turned toward them in shock, their forms rippling with surprise. That's it, Echo, Lyra encouraged, continuing to play. Don't think about the calculations. What does the music make you feel? Echo's form shimmered, and they produced another tone, this one carrying a hint of what could only be described as joy. One by one, other students began to experiment, their usual precise frequencies giving way to something more organic, more emotional. Guardian Zeph moved quickly to the front of the room. This is highly irregular, they announced, their tones sharp with concern. Students, return to your standard frequency patterns immediately. But something had changed. The young harmonians had tasted something new, something that resonated with a part of them they hadn't known existed. Echo stood up, their crystalline form glowing softly. Guardian Zeph, they said, their tones carrying an unusual warmth. Did you feel it? The music, it created something inside me. Something that can't be calculated. Lyra lowered her violin, watching the interaction carefully. She could see Guardian Zeph struggling, their perfectly geometric form showing tiny irregularities, signs of internal conflict. What you felt was disorder, Zeph said, but their tone lacked conviction. Our society is built on precision, on perfect mathematical harmony. Perhaps, Lyra interjected gently, there's room for both. The universe itself contains both mathematical precision and chaotic beauty. Why shouldn't music do the same? The classroom fell silent, but it wasn't the usual measured silence of harmonian society. It was a silence full of possibility, of questions beginning to form in young minds. Over the next few weeks, Lyra noticed subtle changes in her students. They still produced their perfect frequencies when required, but during her classes they began to experiment. Echo particularly excelled, learning to produce tones that carried emotional resonance while maintaining harmonian clarity. One afternoon, as the students practiced a simple earth melody, Guardian Zeph approached Lyra's desk. The Council of Elders has expressed concern, they said quietly. They believe your teachings are disrupting the harmonic balance of our youth. Lyra looked up at the towering crystalline form. And what do you believe, Guardian Zeph? For the first time, Zeph's response wasn't immediate or precisely measured. I am uncertain. I observe changes in the students. Their frequencies are less precise, yes, but there is something else, something I cannot quantify. That's called growth, Lyra smiled. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from embracing uncertainty. Before Zeph could respond, a commotion arose from the practice area. Echo had discovered they could produce a sound that made their crystalline form create patterns of light, something no harmonian had done before. The other students gathered around, their forms shifting with excitement. Impossible, Zeph whispered, watching as Echo's form danced with colors. Our bodies respond only to precise frequencies, not to emotion, Lyra suggested softly. Maybe your people have more capacity for expression than you realized. The discovery spread quickly through the school. Young harmonians began experimenting with their own forms, creating new patterns, new ways of expressing themselves through sound and light. It was beautiful, but it also sparked fear among the traditional elements of their society. That evening, as Lyra packed up her violin, Echo lingered in the classroom. "Teacher Winters," they said, their tones carrying a new complexity of emotion, "some of the other students are afraid. The elders say we're becoming too human." Lyra knelt beside her student, watching the play of light through their crystalline form. "Echo, you're not becoming human. You're discovering new ways to be harmonian. Change doesn't mean losing who you are, it means growing into who you can be." Echo's form brightened slightly. "Will you teach us more tomorrow?" "Of course," Lyra smiled, "although I think you're teaching me as much as I'm teaching you." As Echo left, Guardian Zeph emerged from the shadows. They had been listening. "The council meets tomorrow," they said, their tones carefully neutral. "They will decide whether these lessons can continue." Lyra nodded, closing her violin case. "Whatever they decide, the music has already begun to play, and once a heart, even a crystalline one, learns to sing, it never forgets the melody." That night, as she looked out over the geometric perfection of the Harmonian city, Lyra heard something new in the usual symphony of precise frequencies. Here and there, barely noticeable, were notes of emotion, of joy, of wonder. The change had begun, and not even the Council of Elders could unhear the song of possibility that now echoed through their crystalline world. The council chamber rose in perfect crystalline spirals, designed to amplify and purify sound frequencies. Lyra stood before the 7 elder resonators, their massive geometric forms towering above her. Guardian Zeph stood to the side, their usually precise form showing subtle signs of agitation. Elder Prime, the largest of the council members, emanated a tone that made the entire chamber vibrate. "We have observed disturbing patterns in our youth. Their frequencies show dangerous variations. This human influence must end." Before Lyra could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Echo burst into the chamber, followed by several other students. Their forms pulsed with unprecedented colors and tones. "Elders, please," Echo's voice carried new harmonics, beautiful but unauthorized. "Teacher Winters isn't destroying our culture, she's helping us grow." "Silence!" Elder Prime's frequency was sharp enough to make the younger harmonians wince. "This emotional disruption proves our point." Guardian Zeph removed the students. But before anyone could move, the chamber began to shake. At first, Lyra thought it was the elders' powerful frequencies, but then she saw genuine alarm in their shifting forms. The crystalline walls trembled, producing discordant tones that no harmonian would ever create willingly. "Seismic disruption," another elder announced. "The crystal foundations are destabilizing." Guardian Zeph rushed to a monitoring panel. "The vibrations are causing chain reactions throughout the city. Our standard emergency frequencies aren't stabilizing the structures." Lyra watched in horror as cracks began appearing in the perfect geometric patterns of the chamber walls. The Harmonians tried to coordinate their emergency response, but their precisely calculated frequencies seemed to make the situation worse, creating dangerous resonance patterns. "Stop!" Lyra shouted. "Your synchronized frequencies are amplifying the vibrations. You need to create countermelodies, different rhythms." Elder Prime's form flickered with dismissal. "Impossible. Our emergency protocols are mathematically perfect." A large section of crystal crashed down nearby, nearly striking a group of young harmonians. Echo, acting on instinct, produced a new kind of tone, one that followed the chaotic pattern of the quake but somehow soothed it, like a mother calming a crying child. Lyra quickly pulled out her violin. "Echo has the right idea. We need to adapt to the rhythm of the crisis, not fight it with rigid patterns. Guardian Zeph, please trust me." Zeph looked between the elders and Lyra, their form showing unprecedented uncertainty. Then, as another shock wave hit, they made their decision. "Students, follow Echo's lead. Elders, I recommend we listen to Teacher Winters." What followed was unlike anything in Harmonian history. As Lyra played her violin, creating a flexible foundation of sound, the young harmonians began producing adaptive tones, following the natural rhythm of the crisis but gentle countermelodies to calm it. Guardian Zeph, to everyone's surprise, added their own deep resonance, helping to coordinate the effort. Gradually, the violent shaking subsided. The crystal structures, instead of fighting the vibrations, began to sway and flex with them, growing stronger through adaptation. Even some of the younger elders, seeing the effectiveness of this new approach, cautiously joined in. As the crisis passed, the chamber fell into a new kind of silence, not the rigid quiet of Harmonian protocol, but a thoughtful pause filled with possibility. Elder Prime's form had shifted subtly, showing signs of deep processing. What we witnessed, they finally said, defies all our established principles. With respect, Elder, Echo stepped forward, their form glowing with newfound confidence. Perhaps our principles need to evolve. The crisis showed us that perfect mathematical harmony isn't always the answer. Sometimes we need to listen to the heart of the music. Guardian Zeph moved to stand beside Echo. I have observed Teacher Winter's methods closely. While I initially shared our concerns, I now see that she isn't teaching our youth to abandon Harmonian ways. She's helping them discover new aspects of their natural abilities. Lyra carefully put away her violin, choosing her words thoughtfully. Your society's precision and mathematical harmony are beautiful. I'm not trying to replace them. But today showed that there's strength in flexibility, in being able to adapt and feel the music of the moment. The elders conferred through private frequencies for several long moments. Finally, Elder Prime spoke again. The council must meditate on today's events. Guardian Zeph, you will continue to oversee the humans' teachings, but now with a new directive, observe and document how these emotional harmonics might be integrated into our emergency response protocols. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. As they left the chamber, Echo's form brightened with barely contained excitement. Teacher Winters, did you see? Even the elders had to adapt. Lyra smiled, nodding how Guardian Zeph's usually rigid form had relaxed slightly. Sometimes the universe forces us to improvise, Echo. The trick is learning to see that as an opportunity rather than a threat. That evening, as crews worked to repair the minor damage from the seismic event, Lyra heard something new in the city's usual mathematical symphony. Here and there, younger Harmonians were adding subtle variations to their frequencies. Nothing dramatic enough to upset the elders, but enough to create a richer, more organic harmony. Guardian Zeph joined her at the observation window. The council's concerns weren't entirely misplaced, they said. Change can be dangerous. So can rigid adherence to tradition, Lyra replied gently. The key is finding balance like any good duet. Zeph's form shimmed slightly, almost like a human nod. Perhaps, they said, their tone carrying a new warmth, it's time for both our peoples to learn some new songs. As night fell over the Crystal City, the traditional evening frequencies began. But now they carried subtle undertones of something more, the first notes of a new harmony beginning to emerge between two very different worlds. 1 month after the seismic event, the Crystal City had transformed. While its geometric beauty remained, there was a new fluidity to its rhythms. In Lyra's classroom, now twice its original size, young Harmonians practiced combining their traditional precise frequencies with emotional expression. Echo had become something of a pioneer, leading their peers in experiments that blended mathematical harmony with creative interpretation. Today, they were teaching their fellow students a new technique they'd discovered, using emotional resonance to create sustainable force fields. The key, Echo explained, their form shifting through beautiful patterns, is to maintain our foundational frequency while allowing our feelings to guide the harmonics. Guardian Zeph, who now actively participated in classes, added their own deep, steady tone to support Echo's demonstration. Their former rigid skepticism had evolved into cautious enthusiasm, especially after seeing how the new techniques improved their emergency response capabilities. Teacher Winters, they called, perhaps you could provide the human counterpoint. Lyra smiled, lifting her violin. Over the past month, she'd learned to play in ways that complemented Harmonian frequencies while maintaining the emotional core of human music. Together, they created something entirely new, a fusion of mathematical precision and heartfelt expression. As they practiced, Director Harrison's face appeared on the communication screen. Lyra, remarkable news from Earth. The International Council has approved the establishment of a permanent cultural exchange program with the Harmonians. The young Harmonians erupted in a symphony of excited tones, their forms creating spectacular light patterns. Even some of the more conservative elders, who now occasionally observed classes, showed signs of approval. There's more, Harrison continued. Several Earth orchestras have requested permission to collaborate with Harmonian musicians. They believe the combination could revolutionize both human and Harmonian music. Echo's form practically sparkled with excitement. Teacher Winters, could we perform for humans too? Before Lyra could respond, Elder Prime entered the classroom. The students immediately shifted to more traditional formations, but the Elder raised a crystalline appendage in a gesture they'd learned from humans, meaning, continue. The Council has been monitoring these developments closely, Elder Prime announced. While we initially feared the dissolution of our cultural identity, we now see the possibility of enhancement through exchange. Therefore, we propose a joint concert, human and Harmonian musicians performing together in both our worlds. The announcement created a wave of harmonious tones, unlike anything Lyra had ever heard, joy, excitement, and anticipation blending with perfect mathematical precision. Guardian Zeph stepped forward, their form showing new confidence. With your permission, Elder Prime, I would like to help coordinate this effort. My time overseeing Teacher Winter's class has given me unique insight into how our two approaches can complement each other. The Elder's form shifted in what Lyra now recognized as approval. Indeed, and we would like Echo to take a leading role in composing the collaborative pieces. Echo's form froze momentarily in surprise before bursting into a rainbow of colors. Me, but I'm just a student. You are a bridge, Lyra said softly, placing a hand near Echo's crystalline surface. You helped us all see that different doesn't mean wrong, it just means new possibilities. Over the next few weeks, the classroom became a laboratory of musical innovation. Human musicians arrived from Earth, bringing their instruments and open minds. The young Harmonians taught them about frequency mathematics, while the humans shared the subtle nuances of emotional expression. Guardian Zeph worked tirelessly to help both sides understand each other. They developed a new conducting technique that combined traditional Harmonian precision with fluid human gestures. The result was something extraordinary, music that could be felt in both heart and crystal. As the day of the concert approached, Lyra watched her students with pride. They hadn't lost their Harmonian nature, they'd expanded it. They could still produce perfect mathematical frequencies, but now they could also create sounds that spoke directly to the soul. Echo, working on their solo piece, called her over. Teacher Winters listened to this. They produced a series of tones that somehow captured both the precision of crystal and the warmth of a summer breeze. I want to show everyone that being different doesn't mean being divided. Lyra nodded, understanding that they weren't just talking about music anymore. That's the most important lesson of all, Echo. When we open our hearts to new harmonies, we find that the universe has endless songs to teach us. As night fell over the Crystal City, the combined sounds of human and Harmonian music floated through the air. It was no longer just mathematical perfection or pure emotion. It was something new, something that spoke of bridges built and barriers overcome. Tomorrow would bring the concert, but the real performance had already succeeded. Two worlds learning to sing together in harmony. The Grand Concert Hall, a masterpiece of crystal and glass, hummed with anticipation. Harmonians and humans filled every space, their excited murmurs creating a unique soundscape of mathematical precision and organic warmth. On stage, Earth's finest musicians sat beside Harmonian tone makers, their instruments and crystalline forms gleaming under the lights. Lyra stood in the wings, her violin ready. Beside her, Echo practically vibrated with nervous energy, their form shifting through subtle colors. Guardian Zeph moved between performers, ensuring everything was in place for this historic performance. Remember, Lyra whispered to her students, this isn't about being perfect. It's about being true to both our traditions. Elder Prime stepped forward to open the concert. Their tone was formal but carried new undertones of warmth that would have been unthinkable months ago. Today, we celebrate not the superiority of one approach over another, but the beauty that comes from harmony between differences. The concert began with traditional pieces from both worlds, a Harmonian frequency symphony followed by a human orchestra playing Mozart. Then came the fusion pieces, carefully composed to blend both styles. Echo's solo drew gasps from both audiences as they demonstrated how emotion could enhance rather than detract from mathematical precision. Guardian Zeph conducted the grand finale, their form flowing with newfound grace as they guided both human and Harmonian musicians. The piece began with pure Harmonian frequencies, precise and crystalline. Then Lyra's violin entered, adding layers of human warmth. One by one, other instruments joined, weaving a tapestry of sound that honored both traditions while creating something entirely new. The applause that followed wasn't just human. The Harmonians had developed their own way of showing appreciation, creating harmonious frequency patterns that made the hall shimmer with light. The barriers between their cultures seemed to dissolve in that moment of shared joy. After the concert, director Harrison announced the next phase of their cultural exchange. The success of this program has led to the creation of the first interstellar conservatory of music. Both humans and harmonians will learn from each other, creating new forms of artistic expression. Echo, still glowing from their successful performance, turned to Lyra. "Will you stay to teach at the new school, Teacher Winters?" Before Lyra could answer, Guardian Zeph joined them. "The council has requested that you consider a permanent position. Your presence has catalyzed changes we never imagined possible." Lyra looked around at her students, at the humans and harmonians mingling together, sharing their love of music. "How could I say no, but only if Echo agrees to be my teaching assistant?" Echo's form burst into joyful colors. "Really, but I still have so much to learn." "That's exactly why you'll be perfect," Lyra smiled. "You understand that learning never stops, that there's always a new harmony to discover." In the years that followed, the Interstellar Conservatory became a symbol of what was possible when different cultures opened themselves to new ideas. Young harmonians learned to express their emotions through music while maintaining their mathematical precision. Human students gained a deeper understanding of the mathematical foundations of harmony while preserving their emotional connection to music. Guardian Zeph, now the head of the conservatory's cultural exchange program, often reflected on how far they'd come. "We thought we were teaching humans about proper sound production," they told Lyra one day, "but instead we learned that proper doesn't always mean perfect." Echo went on to become one of the most innovative composers in both worlds, creating pieces that pushed the boundaries of what was possible when tradition and innovation danced together. Their compositions were played in crystal halls and earth concert venues alike, inspiring a new generation of musicians to look beyond their own cultural assumptions. Lyra continued teaching, watching with pride as each new class of students discovered their own way to blend precision with passion. The violin she'd brought to that first class was now displayed in a place of honor at the conservatory, a symbol of the bridge that had been built between two very different approaches to music. One evening, as the twin suns set over the Crystal City, Lyra stood with Echo and Guardian Zeph on the conservatory's observation deck. The city's evening symphony had evolved into a beautiful fusion of harmonian precision and human expression. Young harmonians could be seen practicing in the gardens below, their forms creating light shows as they explored new ways to make music. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Echo asked, their form gentle with contentment. Lyra shook her head, smiling. "I hoped to teach a few students about human music. Instead, we all learned something more important, that the greatest harmonies come from embracing our differences rather than fearing them." Guardian Zeph produced a tone of agreement. "Perhaps that is the true music of the universe, not perfect mathematics or pure emotion, but the endless dance between them." As night fell, the stars emerged, twinkling like notes in a cosmic symphony. Somewhere out there, other worlds were waiting to add their own unique voices to the growing chorus. The universe, it seemed, had endless new songs to teach those willing to listen with both heart and mind.